Okay, hello, good evening, everyone. Welcome you all on the special webinar today. Thank you, everyone, for being here with us today. My name is Dr. Chokon, for one who has known me before. You can call me Dr. As, a co-founder of Sunbit Lab. We are a company providing functional lab testing for hospital and clinics. And today we are delighted to be here for this special occasion, introduce add-on panel for the FIT test. In Thailand, we know it's advanced food sensitivity test or food information test. For those who new to us, food test is an advanced food sensitivity testing that measure food reaction with special patented technology, make it more accurate and make it easier to follow in terms of treatment. Without further ado, please welcome our guest today, Mr. James White, a CEO of KBMO Diagnostics, provider for FIT test. Hello, James.
Hi, Dr. Art. Nice to see you again.
Okay, nice to see you. Let me hand over to the presentation. Okay, so you can present the slide, and I hope everyone see. If you have any question, you can comment it below on the chat box. Okay, Jen, you can start now.
Great. Perfect. Thank you, Dr. Art, and thanks everyone for tuning in this evening. Much appreciated. Again, it seems a while since I was actually doing this in person in Bangkok, but as we all know, lots of things have changed in the last 2 years. So, but I thought, having been in constant kind of contact with Dr. Art, we thought it would be helpful to introduce some of the new products we've been working on to kind of give people an update as Thailand, I hear, as the US does, everyone kind of hopefully looks to exit the pandemic and be out there in hopefully a more active way again. So just flicking through these slides, what I thought we'd do is we'd go through an overview of the food sensitivity test in terms of how it's different. And then also just as a kind of introduction to KBMO Diagnostics, and then talk a little bit more then about the FIT44, which is the new exciting product that Dr. Art is launching in Thailand. So the key difference with the testing that KBMO offers is we're really looking at 3 different elements with one test. So we look at food sensitivities via IgG 1 through 4. Then we're also looking at an inflammatory response via the marker C3D, which is via the patient's complement activation pathway. And then we're also looking at gut permeability. So we're looking at that with 3 different elements with all the tests we offer. So are there more than 10 foods elevated on the panel? Is there elevated candida on the panel? And thirdly, zonulin, which we'll touch on briefly today as well. So again, I thought it'd be just sensible just to give you guys the setup of the definition. So IFM is the Institute for Functional Medicine. As Dr. Art mentioned, you know, he's offering a lot of functional medicine tests. So I thought we'd use those definitions to kind of put this test in context. So food allergy is an instant response where you are looking at an immediate response, and generally bad things happen. And it's generally pretty straightforward to work out, you know, the food that may be causing that allergy, because it's kind of instant. So it's that cause and effect. Our focus is very much food sensitivity. And what you see with food sensitivity, it's a delayed response, and it can be delayed up to 72 hours. So that makes it much harder for your patients to really kind of work out which foods are the offending ones, which are causing them the response and the symptoms which they come and see you with. So again, because of that delayed nature, and again, the variety of the symptoms, it makes it much harder. So as I say, we've got over 7,000 providers around the world running the test now. So again, I'm often asking them, you know, what are some of the symptoms that, you know, or what is a good patient to run this test on? And so here is a list of some of the symptoms that people have come back to me with: weight loss, autoimmune, migraines. As you can imagine, digestive, gut-related are big ones. Skin issues, again, are big ones, but really fatigue, brain fog. And when you look through all these, really what underlines all of these is some level of inflammation. And I think that's where this test differs, is rather than looking at just the sensitivity, we're also looking at that inflammatory pathway, which I think really sets us apart. So when you look at the kind of when providers are using the test, the why is because really, as I mentioned, that inflammation that's associated with foods is an underlying problem for many of the conditions you will see as providers. So the idea is, if we can get at, you know, via their diet, which foods are causing an inflammatory response unbeknownst to them, so they're not aware that those foods are causing that response, then doing it on an individualized basis with a test like this enables you to be able to treat them much more accurately by having that additional information linked to not only what are their sensitivities, but more importantly, which of those foods are causing the patient an inflammatory response. So again, on this chart, what we're really trying to do is tell you a little bit more about those multiple pathways that we're looking to detect with this test, or really in essence, an additional screen from the traditional food sensitivity tests that are currently on offer. So here, you've got a lot of companies looking at IgG only testing. And the issue with that is you're really only measuring the part of your immune system which tells you which food a patient is exposed to. So it's really telling you which food a patient is eating. And so that's helpful, but it's really a bit of a so what in terms of really what's going on from a health perspective for them. If you then look at what we're doing, so that's the front end part of your immune system. The back end is really what we do, is we're also looking at complement activation. So we're trying to work out at a downstream part of the patient's immune system to say, okay, so you're exposed to the foods in terms of via the IgG, but way more importantly, among those, which ones are causing inflammation, which is really can only be triggered if we kind of capture them from complement activation. So the key here is you have the initial front up screen, which says, okay, which foods are these patients exposed to? But way more importantly, what we're also doing is then doing a further screen to eliminate the false positives and really zero in on the key foods of interest, which is that complement and the C3D screen, which then links much more tightly with the patient's symptoms that they're presenting with. So in essence, we're saying, yes, we're measuring exposure, which is helpful via the IgG, but let's eliminate those false positives by then looking more importantly at which of those foods are causing an inflammatory response. And that's really where the key and magic happens with our test versus some of the others out there on the marketplace. On this slide, we show that in a slightly different format. So as I mentioned, you've got the IgG only on the left-hand side of this graph, as you can see here. And so really, they're only telling you which foods a patient's exposed to. On the right-hand side, you can see our patented approach, which is really showing you the multiple pathways that we're looking at. So the IgG 1 through 4, but then way more importantly as well, the complement activation, which is really mission critical in terms of zeroing in on the key foods of interest, which is then really helpful because then what that helps with is it means that you're zeroing in on the key foods, eliminating those false positives. So then when you think of this from a compliance standpoint, it's really helpful for a patient to see, which a very much limited number of foods that they then need to eliminate from their diet. So just a brief background on the company. We were set up by a gentleman called Dr. Brent Dorval, who works very closely with me still today. His not insignificant claim to fame was he invented the first rapid HIV diagnostic. And so that really percolates through everything we do as an organization. So for example, we run 15 standards and controls per patient to make sure this testing is highly accurate and highly reproducible, which again has been a knock on some of these other tests out there, which I think is one of the big differentiators with the KBMO test. We're based just outside Boston here in the USA, and we have a number of facilities. We have an FDA and ISO registered manufacturing facility, which is where we manufacture the ELISA plates that we run on all our tests. And then we have 2 clear high complexity labs here as well. And we have an R&D center, which is headed up by Dr. Brent Dorval as well. So we're very blessed to have the kind of campus here showing all those different areas, bringing everything together based around the patent we had granted in 2012. So gives us a very good position to very much focus in on this testing. We own the C3D cell line, which is that second screen that we talked about earlier. We've developed specific lyophilization technologies to put down the foods. They're all organic and sourced, so we know exactly where all these foods are from a traceability standpoint. And as you well know, we're fortunate enough to be working with some very good distributors around the world. For example, Dr. Art here in Thailand. We're also now offering the testing in Mexico, Brazil, and we also have a lab partnership in China as well. So this slide is just showing the 3 main panels that we offer. just to kind of give you an idea of what foods we have. I think Dr. Art's translated this as well, so it's in Thai. So again, it's a great one to show patients, to show them the 3 panels, the FIT22, the 132, and the 176. And in essence, the foods that you see here, which are in red on the screen, are the ones that we're going to focus in on for the FIT44 as we go through this presentation as well. So again, one of the key elements we've tried to make sure is that we provide some really helpful compliance tools for both you and the patient. Our report is generally 2 pages long, with the idea of that we need to make it easy for busy providers like yourselves, but more importantly for patients, that they can actually understand what's on the chart as well, so that they can actually follow through and see what's going on. So as you see here, one of the other key differences that we have versus our competition is that we're measuring colorings and additives, because again, those colorings and additives are in a number of places. Firstly, they're in processed food. And as we all know, through the lockdowns we've all been having, that generally patients are eating more processed food than they should be. The second area, which is always worth bearing in mind, they're in supplements. So again, you need to check the supplements to see if patients, are they eating or consuming via the supplements some of those colorings and additives. Third element we also like to think about is personal hygiene products. So again, especially skincare and things like that, it's worth bearing in mind what are in some of those ingredients. Are any of those triggering issues, those many symptoms that we showed earlier that the patient is presenting with? As I mentioned as well up front, we're looking at 3 elements. So we look at the food sensitivity, we're looking at the inflammation, and thirdly, we're looking at leaky gut. So we're looking to help give you some indication, is there leaky gut going on with the patients that you're seeing? So we do that with 3 different elements. So are there more than 10 foods elevated? And that would be defined by the red, orange, and yellow. So are there more than 10 listed? Is the candida elevated? And you can see that on the bottom line here, the candida. And what we're measuring there is there elevated IgG 1 through 4 or complement? And if they are, then that's indicative that your body is showing some kind of response. And so it's key that we measure that. If there is an elevated candida, it's just saying that change or that overgrowth is probably caused by a change in pH, which would be an indicator of some kind of leaky gut. So if that candida is elevated, then generally what we advise the clients to do is look at putting the patient on some kind of gut healing protocol and eliminating the food. So again, it gives you a bit of a clear way, a nice protocol in essence of helping the patient work out what they should do if they have elevated candida or if they've got more than 10 foods elevated. And the third leg of that stool is zonulin, which we'll touch on a little bit as we go through the presentation. As I mentioned, we've invested heavily in trying to provide some key kind of compliance tools. So yes, the report's nice and straightforward. There is a vogue for companies to give you 20, 30-page reports. Our view is we want to keep it simple and easy for you and the patient and not waste time going through 20 or 30 pages. Let's give you that information in a succinct and easy to understand format. And then the other one we've done is, often as you guys will be aware, is when you go through these test results with patients, one of the first questions is, so what can I eat? And so what we've done is we have a team of meal planners that develop individualized meal plans for each of the patient reports that come out for either the 132 or the FIT 176. So this is very helpful because, again, it helps them on their journey forward by giving them some suggestions of what they can eat. And I always mention, I've never met a provider who loves doing meal plans. So this gives you a very good basis of how you can give that to them with the test results. So it feels like more of a packaged approach versus here's your test result. Good luck. We'll see you in 6 to 8 weeks or something. Here we're saying, here's your report, which hopefully you can easily understand and interpret. Here's your meal plan, which you can follow through and work with. And lastly, on that front as well, we also provide the patients a phone app. And again, we found this really helpful because what it does with the phone app is it gives you a way for them to be able to track the full test results and the meal plan on their phones. And as we all are aware, everyone is on their phone a lot. So it gives them a way of having that information to hand if they're grocery shopping, if they're eating out. And then thirdly, what we found is they love to share these results with their friends and family. So on the back of that, what we've seen is that this app now ends up to be a great referral tool for you and your practices, because what they'll do is they'll show them the results. And I know Dr. Art sees this on a regular basis where they say, oh, I can't eat salmon or the chicken. And all their friends and family will question, well, why is that? And they'll say, well, I saw Dr. Art, I wasn't feeling great. I've now eliminated these foods. The symptoms I was presenting with have declined pretty dramatically. I feel much better. I recommend you go and see Dr. Art and definitely get that fit test run when you go and see him. So again, you'll see that within your practice, that there's a great way of having that happening for you in terms of a good way of referring more patients to you. So that's just a kind of quick overview of the testing, how we differ in terms of that multiple pathway approach. And now here's the new FIT44, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through. So this is the list of the 44 additional foods that we've added to the panels. And so again, we're offering this as an individual test now. And again, I think some of the key highlights are we've added more of the ancient grains. So again, to give them a bit more of a view on what's going on from that perspective, we've added more fruits. And we've also looked at sweeteners like monk fruit and stevia as other important elements that, that patients are kind of consuming. One of the other things, as we mentioned up front, is that a lot of these patients are inflamed. So it's very common for these patients to be given omega-3s. So again, we've added the three main ingredients from omega-3, so anchovy, mackerel, and sardine. And so that's been very helpful for patients in terms of the types of supplements, as I mentioned earlier, that they may well be put on. And so what we found with this new panel, that it's worked really well for kind of two different kind of groups of patients. The ones that are looking for a bit of a reset post-pandemic, as you're seeing now in Thailand. And then what we're also seeing is that this is a very helpful panel for groups who are very healthy, because a lot of these foods are things that they might be eating on a regular basis anyway. So they're happy to be tested as they try and improve that last 10 or 15% of their improvement as well. So this is a really good panel for that type of patient who's looking to kind of really top up or the final improvement in their health, as well as I mentioned earlier, the ones that may have put on a bit of extra weight in lockdown or are looking to a reset, basing on now that they're trying to pay more attention to their health, given what we've all gone through in the last couple of years. So again, we've also made sure that this report is in Thai, so that this is a snapshot of what that report will look like. So it's 2 columns versus the 3 that we have on the 132. So hopefully that'll be an added benefit for your patients in terms of how you interpret that. So again, we're very pleased with how that now looks. And so again, we've shared that with Dr. Art, and we'll be excited to share that with you and your patients as we roll this test out in Thailand. And I know Dr. Art's looking to put quite a lot of marketing support behind this to kind of add this on. And I think what we see this is a great first panel, or if people have done the 132, this is a good additional panel on top of that. So again, it's a good way to remarket to some of your existing clients and attract some new clients as they come in. So I've seen a quick question here, so I'll just answer that whilst we're going on. The question was, if the patient has tested positive for mackerel or sardine, do they have to avoid omega-3 supplements? Our answer would be yes, because again, that may well be contributing to some of that inflammation, which you're using that omega-3 for. So the idea would be to look at natural alternatives to omega-3 that you could think of or use, or other anti-inflammatories rather than omega-3, because again, what you would see in that example is that you might see an exasperation or a worsening of the symptoms because you're giving them omega-3. So again, that's just another good way of capturing that. And so again, thank you for that question. So as I mentioned, that's the first product we've launched, the 44. We're also looking to add, hopefully early next year, the zonulin, and that'll be included on the panels that we offer. And then again, we're going to talk with Dr. Art about also looking at potentially an in-office test which would be a good one for looking at eggs, milk, and wheat, the big three. And so the idea with that test is that's something you can do in office. You can show the patient some results there and then. And so we found here in the US and internationally, people are thinking about using that as they enroll new patients, potentially in the pediatric market as well, because again, with children, it's useful to kind of test them for those big three as well, especially if they have skin-related issues or gut-related issues. We're seeing there's quite a lot of interest in that as well. So watch this space, and Dr. Art and probably myself and Dr. Dorval will come back on at some point early in the new year and look to follow this conversation up with going through an introduction to that FAST test. And we'll do a live demo to show you how easy it is to work and some test results and how you then interpret those results for the egg, wheat, and milk test in terms of the FAST test. So just a quick summary here. In terms of it's a patented multi-pathway detection technology, and as I mentioned, that gives you that additional screen. And I think that's really important for you and your clients to eliminate those false positives and give them a way of really zeroing in on the key foods of interest. What we've also done is we've created some really best-in-class compliance tools. So an easy-to-read report, which is obviously in Thai. We have the meal plan, which again is very easy for people to then follow. So again, gives them some steps forward in their journey to try and improve the health or reduce the symptoms they presented with. And thirdly, that phone app, I think, is another important step forward in terms of giving patients more compliance tools on the basis, as we all know, one thing all our clients have in common is they all have a smartphone. So by putting those results on that smartphone, we hope that that will equally aid compliance and add as that additional marketing tool in your armory as you give that to your patients, and hopefully they spread the word about your excellent outcomes they're having with them, as well as the use of the FIT test as well. We've also done a number of clinical studies. So the most recent one was looking at IBS patients. And so with that one, we measured not only the food sensitivities, but we also measured high sensitive CRP, which again is a great marker of overall inflammation. We had 100 patients in this IRB approved study, 50 in the intervention, 50 in the control, and we saw a dramatic reduction in the symptoms as measured by the IBS severity score. And then we also saw a dramatic reduction in that intervention group as well in their high sensitive CRP. So again, it was nice to see symptoms improving and high sensitive CRP coming down as well in that intervention group. So again, the food inflammation test not only reduced symptoms that the patients presented with, but also more importantly, reduced that overall level of inflammation in the patient system. And lastly but not least, again, we continue to work the additional 44 foods. We had input from over 150 providers to try and come up with that for you. Our next zonulin test that will be coming out that we're working with Dr. Alessio Fasano on, so watch the space on this one. And then also the FAST test, the in-office rapid test, which is something we'll come back and present to you next year, which we think will be another good test for you to have and an option to run in office. And again, we'll be offering that through Dr. Art, who we've worked with for a number of years, and again is a leading distributor in Thailand, if not the lead for functional medicine testing. Any other questions? But I just want to kind of take a break now and see what questions that you may have.
Okay, I think we get a lot of information about FIT test. We have the presentation several times. FIT test is not new here, but many times people ask the question, why it's just 132 panels is enough in practice? But there are some food items that you just showed me from the FIT44. That is very important because there are some new healthy food coming out in the market. And sometimes even a good food, if it's not working properly in our body, it can cause inflammation. The FIT test, unlike other kind of food sensitivity test, right, it tells us about the inflammation. And inflammation is everything in terms of like holistic health, but inflammation is the key. 44 panel would be really beneficial for some people who opt for more detail in terms of diet plan. Okay, like you show, the diet plan that you just showed is still available in English only.
Yeah.
I think it's quite easy to understand. It's not a big problem. And for one who like to have the application, in Thailand, I haven't provided application for every patient, okay, but it's available. For some case, if you want to have that application for your patient or your client, just give us a request. And I have some question. Okay, it's not on the screen, but it's an offline question. For this add-on 44 panel, what the result you see, what food that tend to come out positive? What is the most common food that you see problematic in the panel?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think we're seeing some more of the ancient grains coming up, which we highlighted. We're seeing the sweeteners come up because, again, those sweeteners are in lots of products. So I think that's been helpful to point that out. And as the great question about sardine and mackerel came in, same thing. We're beginning to see some of that appear as well. So again, the key with this additional test is it's giving a bit more detail around wheat and gluten and things like that. It's adding some sweetness, again, given the processed foods that patients are eating. And then thirdly, again, we're helping, I think, identify which are the right supplements for a patient to be taking by identifying those key fish as well. So I think those are three big kind of plus points for this panel of more granularity on the whole wheat and wheat gluten, and then more evidence around sweeteners. And thirdly, trying to help around supplements, because again, that you want to make sure that if you're giving a patient a supplement, it's going to improve their health, not make it worse by not knowing how they react to those three main ingredients.
And what about CBD or hemp protein? Is it common to see a problem?
Yeah, so certainly in the US, and I wasn't sure about Thailand, so I didn't really mention it, but it's broadly prescribed now here in terms of by a lot of the natural and holistic practitioners that we work with. So we wanted to add it because, again, if from a supplement standpoint, if you're prescribing something, you want to make sure that that's going to have a positive impact. And as you and I know, there's no such thing as one size fits all. We're all individuals. So that's why we wanted to check to see how patients respond to the hemp seed as well as the pure CBD. So again, that's why we're measuring both of them, because hemp seed and the CBD is slightly different. So we wanted to make sure we could capture that by running both of those on this new panel.
Yeah, quite interesting. Here in Thailand, what's popular in your panel, in the new panel, is monk fruit. Monk fruit is like substitutes for sugar. And of course, CBD is gaining its popularity recently because we are allowed to use CBD with practitioners who certify that. And it's good to know. I think this panel is the first panel ever that measure the food sensitivity for CBD.
Yeah, no, it's a world first.
And with this 44 panel, when we add up with 132 panel, I think it's quite complete.
Yeah.
No matter what type of food you eat, Western, Asian foods, or international food, any kind of food. I have a lot of good feedback from patients in Thailand that it's good to have additive. Food additive is key from your test because no one provide food additive in the test. Yeah.
So we've tried to, as you say, we've tried to identify some of those areas where they're lacking on all the other tests to give you that, not only the additional screen with a looking at inflammation, as we know underpins everything, but more importantly, let's now target areas where no one's offering. So again, I think the CBD is unique, the colorings and additives are unique. And again, hopefully that monk fruit will be popular within the Thai market as well.
It's quite popular now. It's come in like sugar form, so very popular.
Okay.
Good. I have another question about testing. Is turnaround time is the same compared with FIT132?
Yeah, no, it'll be the same turnaround time. So we'll make sure that's the case, so we can keep that good turnaround time that you've been doing up to now.
Okay, so the process would be the same, no change. Right?
Exactly.
Okay, there are some other questions. Just wait for the question.
Okay.
Another thing that you just mentioned is fast test, right? It's kind of rapid test.
Yeah.
I think it's quite interesting for some who want to know the result right away.
Exactly.
How many minutes it take to get the result?
So it's a 10-minute test. So it's again a good one to do, I think, with new patients, because sometimes when you enroll a new patient, I feel like they leave with a very sore arm, having filled out lots of paperwork. So maybe this is a good test to kind of give them, to introduce them to the idea of food sensitivity. It looks at the IgG only, not the complement at this point, but I think it'll be a great test for those big three of egg, milk, and wheat. And as I say, we're seeing a lot of interest in the pediatric market as well, with children looking to run this test as well. The nice thing is it's a single drop of blood, so it's very easy to kind of administer. And again, like I said, I think it would be a good one if there's interest for us to come back and do a follow-on seminar, maybe in January or February, with you and myself and Dr. Dorval.
Okay, I think for now, still there is no question. Let me show you the sample. If you're new here, you would know what it's like. Okay, there are another question. Can we just send 44 panel for one who tested for FIT test 132 before?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
It can be ordered separately. Okay, no problem.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the ideas with this is, rather than, if you've done the 132 and a patient may go, well, why do I want to run the 176? The idea is, let's give the patients the opportunity, especially those who've run the test historically, to run the 44 as a standalone product.
Yeah. I think that's good, because some patient already done FIT test 132 before, so they can add it up.
Exactly.
In case the test is not covered. Okay, so let me show you the test kit here. May be a little bit different than
no problem. I'd be interested to see.
We have prepared everything differently to make sure we get the result on time and there is no problem on the missing test. Okay, This is what the paper look like. Okay, can I share this one? Okay, let me finish this. Share the big. Okay, so bigger. Okay, this one is the filter paper. Okay, in the US, we collect only one. Okay, and on the lab you use only one. But here in Thailand, we collect double sample. Okay, to make sure in case there are something wrong, we can repeat it right away. Okay, so no need to get blood draw every time when we want to repeat it, because from time to time it can happen. Okay, in case the result is not 100%, we can repeat it right away. Okay, and this, when we collect the blood test in the hospital or clinic, if you can do normal blood draw, you can use the drop of syringe. Okay, drop 5 drop. Okay, and another 5 drop here. Let it dry for 30 minutes to 2 hours. Okay, but we make sure our process, sometimes we leave it longer than 2 hours to make sure it's completely dry. Okay, because it can be off if you don't, if it's still wet. In Thailand, the humidity is quite high, so we want to make sure it's dry. Okay, and then we put it in this one, biohazard bag. Okay, for your own safety. Okay, and that we put it in the bag. Then we check everything, the request form, your signature, doctor's signature. If everything correct, we send it to the US. It sent directly to James, and then it's your turn to process everything. Okay?
Exactly.
And when we get the result here in Thailand, we thank you, your team from KBMO that help provide us Thai version. So we have Thai version of the result. If you request for English version, you can get the original version too. And here what we do, we have the detailed report, the food guide. For your patient, they can take a look and follow the instruction here with some common question and answer here. This is like the sample paper. Original one you can have like the hard books, something like that. So it would look much nicer than this. Okay. And, okay. This is the first time, right, James, that you see our report?
Yeah, no, I think it looks great. Yeah, it looks very good.
And then if you want to have a logo, okay, not a Sandwich logo, you can customize your own logo. Okay, so this would be like customized result report for your patient. Okay, it looks very nice. Okay.
Yeah, it looks really nice.
Customize everything, color, not the picture at the moment, just color and the logo. Okay, and this is the name of your client, your patients. Yep, it looks like this. Okay, and in case you have some other question or when you do the test, you're not sure with the result, you can contact me directly. If there are some questions related to technical testing, I may contact James and KBMO to get the answer. We support everything, make you can practice with your patient very easy.
Yeah, no, your team do a great job, and we're always here to support in terms of whatever the patient needs and the provider in terms of from an educational standpoint to help make it go as smooth as possible.
You know that this is 7 o'clock in the US, so
Exactly.
thank you very much that you wake up so early to help like introduce us your new test. Okay, and hopefully in the near future we can get more informative presentation. Okay, when you have a new test, new advanced sonolin test like you mentioned, and fast test. Okay, I'm looking forward. Okay, I'm looking to it.
Excellent.
Okay, so thank you so much. Thank you again. Okay,
great.
and
thank you guys.
Thank you everyone for joining us today.